I'm Matt Guichard. This is No Holds Barred. In today's episode, I want to talk about something that's quite troubling in our society. I've been asked to make comments on it, and that's why we're talking about it here today. I'm going to use the term revenge porn. I don't like that term, but there's some interesting law in that area. And then there's the implication of AI, which has come on, and that's particularly why several people who've watched my podcast have asked me about the rules. So let's just start out with, what is the concept of revenge porn? Well, right out of the penal code, I'm not going to read it to you, but it is there. It is actually a misdemeanor, and there's also a civil code section on the civil side where both can implicate somebody who engages in it. And what is revenge porn? And for God's sake, I don't know why people do this, but you hear it all the time where a couple has somehow taken pictures of each other at sometimes or acting together, and then they break up. And one or the other of them decides at some point, for revenge purposes, they're going to publish photographs, intimate photographs, body parts, whatever. And they do that. If in fact it's done for that purpose and it's done without the consent of the other party, and as you can imagine, in almost all cases, it is done without the consent of the other party, then if it can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt, it can result in a conviction of a misdemeanor. So I want to cite you to Penal Code Section 647J4. So you can go right online and Google that. California Penal Code Section 647J4, and in fact, that is the Penal Code section for revenge porn. And it gives you all kinds of things about what exactly body parts can be implicated. So I'm not going to bore you with all of that, but I will just tell you that's what it is. And then we have Civil Code Section 1708.85A. Same kind of thing, a Civil Code section. It is illegal to do that. So either criminally or civilly, it's illegal to engage in revenge porn. And you kind of think to yourself, well, what knucklehead wants to do that anyway? But hey, the world's filled with all kinds of people. The real point that I want to make here today is not so much that that's what the rule is, and it is, for those of you who were thinking of engaging that, don't, but it's how AI impacts. And if you recall, not very long ago, Taylor Swift was the subject of not revenge porn in the sense that they were real pictures of her, but somebody created photographs or images, we'll say, of her that people looking at them could determine would think it was her. And in fact, it wasn't her. I went through an AI seminar not very long ago, and the person who put it on did a wonderful, wonderful job. It's fascinating the kinds of things for positive that can be done, but also for negative. And as he was speaking during the course, he said, so I want you to look at this video. And there was a video exactly of him, his voice, everything. It was him, absolutely. And he was making some statements, and then he turned it off and asked the class, all right, what'd you think of that? We were thinking, oh, pretty good. You looked good. You look like you look here. That was not me. What do you mean that was not me? That was AI generated. I created that. That was not a photograph of me. That was not a video of me. That was created. And the reason for this podcast is not necessarily to give you the final true answers of how that is going to impact revenge form or somebody creating images of another for revenge purposes or for whatever purpose like the Taylor Swift, but is to alert everybody to the idea that this kind of thing can happen and is happening. And the legislatures of all of our states and the federal government is going to have to look at this and determine these aren't real images. They weren't given in privacy and held in privacy. These are images that are created out of whole cloth and put on the internet. And what is the purpose, though? If the purpose is the same, I'm going to submit to you, then the rules should be the same. Now, unfortunately, revenge porn is a misdemeanor. And I say it's a misdemeanor, unfortunately, because the penalty for it is not particularly great as compared to the incredible damage that can be done to somebody's reputation, work, standing, or whatever. And can you imagine somebody running for office who has a pristine record and all of a sudden exposing all over, and that's probably the term that's not good for this, but all over the internet there are photos of that particular person engaging in illegal acts or engaging of any kind. And so we have to be very, very mindful of how this use of AI and information that's out on the web, take it with a grain of salt oftentimes. I often hear from people in response to some podcast, well, wait a minute, that's not really the rule I read somewhere, or that's not really the law, or wait a minute, stand your ground isn't something that's not true. Well, be careful when you see something in believing it in the first order of business. So let's get back then to the concept of revenge porn. Let's limit it kind of to that and what AI can do and how that can result in a criminal conviction or civil liability and the huge amount of damage that somebody can actually have happen to them because of that kind of thing. So I will say on the civil side, as opposed to the criminal, we often say civil side is only about money, or perhaps also about injunctive relief, saying you must take it down. But as we know, so often something gets onto the web, and no matter the effort to try to take it down, it's still out there. But there's money relief. So if you were to sue somebody in civil court for putting out images of you, whether fake or real, and you could prove who the person was who did it, it almost rises to that level of the libel and slander issues that we've talked about in prior podcasts. And the idea of it's untrue, it's done with malice, it's done knowing that it will harm, and in fact it's harmed, and it's published. And remember what I talked about, publishing simply means putting it out there. You can publish something to one other person, and it could be libel or slander, or put it on the web, or send out handouts or whatever. So anyway, I'm going to limit it to that because this is clearly something we'll talk about in the future because we're just getting started in learning about AI and the kinds of things that can happen. One of the points that somebody made to me was, well, how do you defend if you are a person who's being accused of sending out revenge porn? Are you saying, but I didn't do it, or I didn't mean to do it, or that's not really her, or how do you do that? Well, it'll be interesting to see, and that's why we want further podcasts about any of these cases that have actually gone to trial. What has happened? Or has somebody actually filed a civil complaint? What has happened? Have they recovered monies? Have they done whatever? But once it's out there, unfortunately, oftentimes your reputation is shot. It hurts. I can see it coming up, honestly, in political campaigns where somebody puts out information about the past history of somebody and then publishes some photographs saying this is them. A number of years ago when I was working for a big law firm in San Francisco, and we had some insurance companies asking us to do examinations under oath of people who had made big insurance claims. And I remember one fellow said that he in fact had this incredible collection of baseball cards, and he had an original Mickey Mantle, an original Willie Mays, and all of these fellows from back in the day, and this thing was worth well over $1 million, and somebody had broken into his house and stolen it, and he put in a claim for it. And the interesting issue, of course, was He had it in his garage, he said, and all kinds of things that didn't make sense. But we went to him and did an examination oath, and he had to swear under oath. But prior to doing that, I had learned how you can Photoshop something in, so you could say, here's the picture of my Mickey Mantle card. Here are pictures of that whole baseball collection on shelves, and you can create this picture and say, there it is. Of course, we have metadata. We have ways of looking at that to say, well, that was Photoshopped in. But anyway, I want to say it's a big mess. Stay tuned, because lots and lots that we're going to talk about in the future about AI, revenge porn, website truthfulness, and not. So stay tuned for our next episode of No Holds Barred. Thanks for watching this episode of No Holds Barred. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. And what I'd like to say about No Holds Barred is no hyperbole, no bullshit, just the law and the facts. The reason why we like you to hit the like button and the subscribe button is because it helps us with our YouTube rankings. The more people that do that, the more people will watch our episode, the more comments we get, the more questions we get, the higher we go in the rankings. It helps you, and it certainly helps us.